Hey there! Stack Lessons here. Today's drill is 20 questions on EC2 pricing decisions, layered security services, and S3 storage tiers. You know the format: question, countdown, reveal, explanation. 10 seconds is the default, but pause any time. Let's get started. Here we go. Let's check question 1. The finance team at Northwind Media wants to receive automated alerts before their AWS monthly spending exceeds their approved budget. They need a notification when actual monthly costs reach 80% of the budget threshold, and a separate notification when AWS projects that forecasted spend will exceed 100% of the budget by month end, giving them time to act before the overrun occurs. Which AWS service natively supports both alert types? Select one. Review the answer choices on screen. The correct answer is option B. Budgets does two things CloudWatch billing cannot. AWS Budgets allows teams to define custom spending or usage budgets and configure automated alert notifications when actual costs reach a specified percentage of the budget threshold or when forecasted spend is projected to exceed the budget before the period ends. Both alert types described, actual costs at 80% and forecasted costs at 100%, are natively supported by AWS Budgets with delivery via email or Amazon SNS notifications. AWS Cost Explorer is an analysis and visualization tool that examines historical and current cost data, identifies cost trends, and generates right-sizing recommendations. It does not proactively send threshold alerts when spending approaches a limit. AWS Cost and Usage Report generates the most granular billing data available, delivering comprehensive cost and usage files to Amazon S3 on a configurable schedule for offline analysis. It does not generate real-time alerts when thresholds are approached. Amazon CloudWatch creates alarms based on AWS service performance and operational metrics such as CPU utilization, API error rates, and network throughput. While CloudWatch supports a billing alarm for estimated charges, it is limited to actual charges in the US East region and does not support forecasted spend projections, making it unsuitable for the second alert requirement. Now, question 2. Read this one twice. Conteso Enterprises uses AWS Organizations with an organizational unit, OU, named development that contains all developer accounts. The central security team needs to prevent every IAM user and IAM role within the development OU, including principals with administrator access, from launching Amazon EC2 instances in the App Southeast 1 region. The restriction must be centrally enforced and cannot be overridden by any account-level administrator. Which mechanism should the security team use? Select one. Review the answer choices on screen. The correct answer is option A. SCPs act as a ceiling, not a grant. Service control policies, SCPs, are the correct mechanism because they define the maximum available permissions for every principal in every account within an organizational unit, and they cannot be overridden by account-level IAM administrators. An SCP containing an explicit deny for EC2 launch actions in App Southeast 1, attached to the development OU blocks all IAM users and roles in those accounts, including those with administrator access, from performing the restricted action, because SCPs act as a ceiling above IAM policies. Even when an IAM policy grants full permissions, an SCP prevents the effective permission from being exercised. IAM permission boundaries control the maximum permissions of individual IAM entities such as users or roles, but they must be attached to each entity separately and can be modified or removed by any account administrator with sufficient IAM permissions, so they do not provide the centralized OU-level enforcement required. AWS config rules with automatic remediation are detective and corrective controls. They identify non-compliant resources after they are created and can terminate instances automatically. but they do not prevent the EC2 launch API call from succeeding in the first place. Resource-based policies are attached to specific existing resources and cannot intercept API calls that create new resources in a region. Let's slow down here. The difference between these enforcement options is exactly what the exam tests. Imagine you're the security lead at Contoso. You need to stop dev teams from spinning up EC2 instances in Singapore, and you can't trust every account admin to keep that rule in place. That's where service control policies, SCPs, come in. An SCP attached to the development organizational unit sets a hard ceiling above every IAM policy in every account underneath it. Even if a developer has administrator access, the SCP wins. Permission boundaries sound similar, but they live on individual roles, and any account admin can remove them. Config rules only catch violations after the launch already succeeded. The exam wants the one control that's centrally enforced and unoverridable. That's the SCP. Now, question 3. Start with what the user needs. Conteso Digital is adding an image processing feature to their photo sharing application. When a user uploads a photo, the platform must automatically generate 3 thumbnail sizes. Each processing job completes in 4 to 10 seconds. The engineering team wants to avoid managing or patching any servers, and requires the solution to scale to 0 between uploads, so no costs are incurred during idle periods. Select one. Review the answer choices on screen. The correct answer is option B. Scale to 0 with no servers, that's Lambda. AWS Lambda triggered by S3 object creation events is ideal because Lambda is fully serverless with 0 infrastructure management, scales automatically from 0 to peak without pre-provisioning capacity, and executes for at most the duration of each job well within its 15-minute maximum. The S3 event trigger invokes a Lambda function per upload with no polling required and no cost incurred between uploads. EC2 with auto-scaling handles variable workloads but requires managing the operating system, security patches, and AMI updates, and the minimum group size means costs persist even when idle. It does not scale to 0. ECS on Fargate eliminates OS management, but containers in a long polling configuration run continuously as a service, meaning compute costs accumulate between uploads rather than scaling to 0. Elastic Beanstalk simplifies application deployment, but provisions and maintains EC2 instances underneath, so the environment does not scale to 0 between processing jobs. Let us keep moving. Question 4. The wording is the clue. Litware Financial is subject to regulatory requirements mandating that its encryption keys be stored in dedicated, single-tenant hardware security modules that are exclusively provisioned for Litware's use, that no other AWS customer shares, and that AWS employees cannot access or manage. Which AWS key management service satisfies these requirements? Select one. Review the answer choices on screen. The correct answer is option A. Single-tenant hardware rules out KMS immediately. AWS Cloud HSM provides dedicated single-tenant hardware security modules provisioned exclusively for one customer account. The customer generates and manages cryptographic keys directly inside the HSM hardware, and AWS has no access to the key material. This architecture satisfies regulatory requirements for exclusive hardware tenancy and customer-only control. AWS KMS with customer-managed keys allows customers to control key rotation, usage policies, and deletion, but the underlying HSM infrastructure is shared across multiple AWS customers and AWS manages the hardware. This multi-tenant model does not satisfy requirements for exclusive hardware provisioning. AWS Secrets Manager is designed for securely storing and rotating database credentials, API keys, and other application secrets, not for managing encryption keys in dedicated HSM hardware. AWS Certificate Manager provisions and manages SSL and TLS certificates for use with AWS services, and does not provide encryption key management in customer-controlled hardware. Let us keep moving. Question 5, coming up. Conteso Analytics runs large-scale financial risk modeling simulations on Amazon EC2. Each job takes 4 to 6 hours to complete, and can be paused and resumed from a checkpoint without losing computed results. The models run on a flexible schedule and are not time-critical. The team wants to significantly minimize compute costs for these workloads. Which EC2 purchasing option is most cost-effective for this fault-tolerant batch workload? Select one. Review the answer choices on screen. The correct answer is option D. Checkpointable batch on a flexible schedule, that's Spot. Spot instances offer savings of up to 90% compared to on-demand pricing by using AWS spare EC2 capacity. They are ideal for fault-tolerant, interruptible workloads such as batch processing, data analysis, and scientific simulations where jobs can be checkpointed and restarted if AWS reclaims the capacity with a 2-minute interruption notice. Because the financial modeling jobs can resume from a checkpoint, the team can fully leverage spot pricing without losing computational progress when instances are interrupted. On-demand instances provide guaranteed, uninterrupted capacity at the full per-hour rate, appropriate for production workloads where interruption is unacceptable, not for budget-sensitive flexible batch jobs. Dedicated hosts provide physical server tenancy for licensing compliance and regulatory isolation at a significant premium, making them the most expensive option and inappropriate for a cost minimization goal. Standard reserved instances require a 1-year or 3-year upfront commitment, and are best suited for steady state, always-on workloads that run continuously, not intermittent batch jobs where continuous capacity may not be needed. Cost alerting lives in budgets not CloudWatch. SCPs override even account admins. Scale to zero workloads belong on Lambda. Single-tenant HSMs demand Cloud HSM. Checkpointable batch jobs are made for Spot. Time for another one. Question 6. Do not rush the wording. Litware Incorporated runs steady-state production workloads 24 hours a day, 7 days a week on a mix of general-purpose M5 instances for web-tier components, and compute-optimized C5 instances for data processing jobs. The engineering team frequently adjusts instance sizes within each family, and occasionally migrates entire workload tiers between the M5 and C5 families as performance requirements evolve. The finance team wants to reduce EC2 costs by at least 40% compared to on-demand pricing without restricting the team's freedom to change instance families. Which purchasing option best meets these requirements? Select one. Review the answer choices on screen. The correct answer is option B. Cross-family flexibility is the phrase that decides this. Compute savings plans deliver up to 66% savings compared to on-demand pricing and automatically apply to any EC2 instance usage regardless of instance family, size, availability zone, operating system, or tenancy within a region. Teams that shift workloads between the M5 and C5 families benefit directly because the discount is tied to the hourly spend commitment, not to a specific instance type. Regional standard reserved instances provide instance size flexibility within a single instance family for Amazon Linux with default tenancy, so an M5 regional reapplies to all M5 sizes proportionally. However, that discount does not extend across instance families. Purchasing separate standard REs for both the M5 and C5 families reduces flexibility, requires accurate per-family capacity forecasts, and leaves any cross-family migration unbilled by the wrong RE, reducing realized savings below the target. EC2 instance savings plans are scoped to a specific instance family in a specific AWS region and cover all sizes and operating systems within that family. Usage shifted from M5 to C5 receives no discount from an M5 scoped plan, so cross-family migrations reduce effective savings. Spot instances can lower costs by up to 90% compared to on-demand pricing, but are subject to a 2-minute interruption notice when AWS reclaims capacity for other customers. Continuous production web tier and data processing workloads running around the clock require uninterrupted availability, making spot inappropriate regardless of the cost-benefit. This one trips people up. Let's break down what family locked actually means for your savings. Imogene Litware's team migrates their batch jobs from M5 to C5 mid-year. Suddenly their reserved instance discount is locked to the wrong family. That's the trap. Compute savings plans flip the model. You commit to a dollar amount per hour, say $5. AWS applies that discount to any instance family you run. Move from M5 to C5, still discounted. Switch back, still discounted. You get up to 66% off on-demand pricing, clearing the 40% target easily. Reserved instances and EC2 instance savings plans lock you to one family. Cross-family migrations lose the discount. Spot instances save more, but they get a 2-minute interruption notice, not safe for 24/7 production. Commit to the spend, not the family. That's why compute savings plans wins. Time for another one. Here's question 7. Quick check. Adatum Financial is undergoing a PCI DSS audit. The external auditors require official documentation proving that the AWS infrastructure underlying Adatum's payment processing environment meets PCI DSS compliance standards. The compliance manager needs to download an official AWS PCI DSS attestation of compliance report to share with the auditors. Which AWS service provides access to this documentation? Select one. Review the answer choices on screen. The correct answer is option C. PCI Audit Doc Download Artifact is the only door. AWS Artifact is the self-service compliance portal that provides on-demand access to AWS security and compliance reports and agreements, including SOC 1, SOC 2, and SOC 3 reports, PCI DSS attestations of compliance, ISO 27001 certificates, HIPAA Business Associate agreements, and other third-party audit documents. Compliance officers can download these reports directly to satisfy auditor requests without involving AWS support. AWS Trusted Advisor is an automated recommendation engine that analyzes AWS configurations and provides best practice guidance across cost optimization, performance, security, and fault tolerance categories. It does not provide downloadable compliance certifications from third-party auditors. AWS Security Hub aggregates, correlates, and prioritizes security findings from multiple AWS services and third-party partners for threat detection and security posture monitoring. It is not a source for official compliance attestation documents. AWS Config tracks the configuration state of AWS resources over time and evaluates them against rules you define, but it does not provide official third-party PCI DSS compliance attestation documents. Ready. Question 8. The setup controls the answer. Wingtip Toys security team discovers that an EC2 security group was modified at 2:47 a.m. to allow unrestricted inbound access on port 22. The team must identify which IAM principal made the change, the source IP address used, and whether any other security groups were modified during the same session. Which AWS service contains this information? Select one. Review the answer choices on screen. The correct answer is option A. Who, what, when, from where? CloudTrail has it all. AWS CloudTrail records every API call made in an AWS account, capturing the caller's identity, the timestamp, the source IP address, the specific API action, and the request parameters. Investigating a security group modification requires searching CloudTrail logs for the authorized security group ingress event, which reveals exactly who made the change and from which IP. CloudTrail is the authoritative source for the who, what, when, and from where of any AWS API action. Amazon CloudWatch collects performance metrics and application logs and fires alarms based on thresholds. It does not record API call history or caller identity for configuration changes. Amazon Guard Duty analyzes CloudTrail logs, VPC flow logs, and DNS logs to detect threats and surface anomalous behavior, but it does not expose the raw audit trail needed to reconstruct who made a specific configuration change at a specific time. Amazon Inspector performs automated vulnerability assessments against EC2 instances and container images, not configuration change auditing. Ready. Question 9. Choose for this case, not every case. Fourth Coffee's loyalty program team needs a database to store customer profiles and point balances for 50 million members. The application must support single-digit millisecond read and write latency at any scale, handle unpredictable traffic spikes during promotional events without manual capacity adjustments, and the data model consists of simple key-value lookups by customer ID. Which AWS database service is the best fit? Select one. Review the answer choices on screen. The correct answer is option C. 50 million rows, key value, spiky traffic, DynamoDB wins. Amazon DynamoDB is purpose-built for high-throughput, low-latency key-value workloads at any scale. With on-demand capacity mode, DynamoDB automatically scales read and write capacity in response to unpredictable traffic without requiring capacity planning or manual intervention. Single-digit millisecond performance is guaranteed regardless of table size or request volume, making it ideal for a 50 million member loyalty program accessed by customer ID. Amazon RDS for PostgreSQL is a fully managed relational database optimized for complex SQL queries and transactions. It does not scale to millions of write operations per second, and requires more complex sharding strategies for that volume. Amazon Aurora excels at relational workloads with complex joins and ACID transactions. Auto-scaling read replicas help with read-heavy workloads, but Aurora is not designed for the extreme write throughput that a global loyalty program requires with simple key-value access patterns. Amazon ElastiCache for Redis provides sub-millisecond in-memory caching, but it is a caching layer, rather than a durable primary database. Cached data can be evicted or lost on restart, making it unsuitable as the system of record for customer balances. Let us switch gears. Question 10. Read the ask, not just the topic. Adatum Corp is redesigning its batch analytics infrastructure. A cloud architect wants to align the new design with the sustainability pillar of the AWS well-architected framework. The current architecture runs batch processing jobs on always-on Amazon EC2 on-demand instances even during off-peak hours when no jobs are running. Which approach best demonstrates the sustainability design principles? Select one. Review the answer choices on screen. The correct answer is option C. Sustainability means eliminating idle consumption, not just cutting cost. The sustainability pillar of the AWS well-architected framework focuses on reducing environmental impact by maximizing resource utilization and eliminating idle consumption. Using spot instances for batch processing leverages spare AWS capacity efficiently, and automatically terminating compute resources when jobs finish directly eliminates the energy waste of always-on idle instances, implementing the core sustainability principles of right-sizing and removing unnecessary resource consumption. Deploying to a single availability zone sacrifices resilience for a marginal energy reduction and does not represent a meaningful sustainability practice. Upgrading to larger instance types increases instantaneous resource consumption, The net energy impact depends on the specific workload and does not reliably improve overall efficiency. Reserved instances commit to consistent hourly usage and reduce cost, but they do not prevent idle compute consumption or improve resource utilization when workloads are intermittent. Artifact is the compliance PDF portal. CloudTrail owns who, what, when for every API call. DynamoDB on demand handles key value at any scale. Sustainability means terminating idle resources, not just right-sizing them. Let us switch gears. Question 11. Eliminate before you select. Proseware's security team discovered that their public-facing web application experienced two distinct attack events: a large-scale volumetric flood that overwhelmed network capacity by sending massive amounts of traffic to exhaust server resources, and a separate series of malicious HTTP requests containing SQL injection strings targeting the application database. Which combination of AWS services should they deploy to defend against both attack types? Select one. Review the answer choices on screen. The correct answer is option D. Guard duty detects, Shield defends, don't let them swap. AWS WAF, Web Application Firewall, operates at Layer 7 and inspects HTTP and HTTPS requests using configurable rules and AWS managed rule groups to block common application exploits including SQL injection, cross-site scripting, and other WASP top 10 threats before they reach the origin application. AWS Shield provides managed DDoS protection. Shield standard automatically defends all AWS customers against volumetric network floods, protocol attacks, and reflection attacks at no additional cost, while Shield Advanced adds a 24/7 DDoS response team and enhanced detection for larger events. Amazon Guard Duty performs threat detection by analyzing CloudTrail events, VPC flow logs, and DNS logs, and is not designed to block live network floods or filter incoming HTTP requests in real time. Amazon Inspector performs vulnerability assessments on EC2 instances and container images, but does not inspect or block active attack traffic. Amazon Macie discovers sensitive data stored in S3 buckets and is unrelated to network attack defense. Amazon Detective assists with post-incident security investigation and does not provide active prevention capabilities. This one has a tricky combo. Let's break down exactly which AWS service stops which attack. Imagine you're a bouncer at a club. One problem: a mob of 10,000 bots is flooding the entrance so nobody else can get in. Another problem: someone inside is slipping forged IDs, SQL strings, to the bartender. Those are two completely different threats needing two different tools. AWS Shield stops the mob at the door. It's DDoS defense at the network layer. WAF, short for Web Application Firewall, checks every HTTP request for bad patterns, SQL injection strings. It blocks those too. The trap in this question is the word detect. Guard Duty detects threats. It doesn't block live traffic. Inspector scans your code. It doesn't stop attacks mid-flight. When the stem says defend against both, you need one blocker for each layer. Keep your focus here. Let's open question 12. Contesso Corp runs a production web application on 20 Amazon EC2 M5. Extra large Linux instances that operate continuously 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. The workload is stable and the instance type will not change for the next 12 months. The finance team wants to maximize cost savings and is willing to pay the full 12-month cost upfront. Which EC2 purchasing option provides the highest discount for this workload? Select one. Review the answer choices on screen. The correct answer is option A. All upfront, standard, 1 year. That's the discount trifecta. Standard reserved instances with all upfront payment and a 1-year term provide the maximum discount available for a steady state, predictable workload on a fixed instance type. Among all reserved instance payment options, All Upfront provides the largest discount because AWS receives the full payment immediately. Standard reserved instances for a one-year term with All Upfront payment typically deliver approximately 40% savings compared to on-demand pricing for Linux instances. Since the instance type is fixed and the team is certain of their 12-month commitment, standard reserved instances are the optimal choice. On-demand instances carry the highest per-hour rate, with no discount, and are designed for unpredictable or short-lived workloads, not continuous 24/7 production systems. Spot instances can provide up to 90% savings compared to on-demand pricing, but are subject to interruption with only a 2-minute warning when AWS reclaims capacity. Continuous production web applications requiring uninterrupted availability cannot tolerate spot interruptions regardless of the cost-benefit. Convertible reserved instances with no upfront payment and a 3-year term provides flexibility to exchange instance types and operating systems, but offers a smaller discount than all upfront payment, and the 3-year commitment exceeds the team's 12-month planning horizon. All right, question 13. Underline the key phrase mentally. Northwind Pharmaceuticals runs a validated software environment on AWS using a commercial database licensed on a per-socket, per-core basis. The vendor's licensing agreement requires full visibility into the physical server's socket and core topology for compliance reporting. The workload runs continuously around the clock. Which EC2 purchasing option satisfies the licensing compliance requirement? Select one. Review the answer choices on screen. The correct answer is option C. Physical socket visibility eliminates every shared tenancy option. EC2 dedicated hosts provision, a physical server dedicated exclusively to a single AWS account. The customer receives full visibility into the host's socket and physical core configuration, which is required for per-socket and per-core software license compliance for products such as Oracle Database, SQL Server, and Windows Server. Dedicated hosts also support Bring Your Own License, BYOL, agreements that require physical server affinity. On-demand instances run on shared, multi-tenant physical hardware managed by AWS. Customers have no visibility into the underlying server topology, so per-socket and per-core license compliance cannot be established or reported. EC2 spot instances are also multi-tenant with no physical host visibility, and they are subject to a 2-minute interruption notice when AWS reclaims capacity for other customers. Both the lack of host visibility and the interruption risk make spot instances unsuitable for continuously running validated pharmaceutical environments. Standard reserved instances provide a billing discount and optional capacity reservation, but still run on shared physical infrastructure. Purchasing a reservation does not change the tenancy model or grant visibility into the physical server topology required for per-socket license compliance. All right, question 14. Separate fact from assumption. A Datum Cores development team is evaluating AWS compute services for 2 new workloads. The first workload generates thumbnail images triggered by file uploads to Amazon S3, with each image processing job completing in under 3 minutes. The second workload transcodes full-length video files, where individual jobs can run for up to 2 hours and must not be interrupted mid-execution. Which option correctly matches each workload to the most appropriate service? Select one. Review the answer choices on screen. The correct answer is option A. Lambda looks perfect until you see 2 hours. AWS Lambda is ideal for thumbnail generation because the workload is event-driven, triggered by S3 uploads, short-lived, completes in under 3 minutes, and stateless. Lambda scales automatically with the volume of incoming events, requires no server management, and charges only for the actual duration of execution. Short duration, event-driven, stateless workloads are precisely the scenarios Lambda was designed to serve. Amazon EC2 is necessary for the video transcoding workload because AWS Lambda enforces a maximum execution timeout of 15 minutes. A transcoding job running for up to 2 hours would be terminated by Lambda before it could complete. EC2 instances provide long-running compute environments with no execution time limit, making them appropriate for extended batch processing, compute-intensive encoding tasks, and any workload that exceeds Lambda's 15-minute maximum duration. Using Lambda for both workloads is not viable because the 2-hour video transcoding jobs would hit the hard 15-minute execution limit and be forcibly terminated. Using EC2 for both workloads would function technically, but is unnecessarily complex and expensive for thumbnail generation, which is a natural fit for Lambda's serverless, autoscaling, pay-per-invocation model. Let's slow down here. The Lambda timeout limit is the key to this whole question. Picture Lambda as a sprinter, great for quick bursts, not built for long runs. Lambda has a hard timeout of 15 minutes. That's it. After 15 minutes, it stops your code whether you're done or not. Your thumbnail job finishes in under 3 minutes, comfortably inside that window. But the video transcoding job can run for 2 full hours. At minute 15, Lambda cuts the cord and your job dies half-finished. EC2 has no such limit. It runs as long as you need. That's the punchline. Lambda is the right pick for the 3-minute thumbnail job. EC2 is your only option for anything that runs past 15 minutes. Okay. Question 15. Do not reward the familiar term. Northwind Data Services is designing a data lake on Amazon S3 with 3 data categories. Compliance audit logs are written once per month and retained for 7 years. They are almost never retrieved except during a scheduled audit. Raw event data is ingested daily, accessed heavily for the first 45 days, then rarely accessed for the following 90 days before deletion. Aggregated analytics results are accessed with completely unpredictable frequency. Some results are viewed dozens of times per week while others sit untouched for months. Which combination of S3 storage classes optimizes costs across all 3 categories? Select 3. Review the answer choices on screen. The correct answers are Option A, Option C, and Option E. 3 data patterns, 3 classes, match each to its access curve. S3 Glacier Deep Archive is the lowest cost S3 storage class, and is designed for data retained for many years with access occurring at most once or twice per year. At a fraction of S3 standard pricing, it is ideal for 7-year compliance archives rarely retrieved outside of audit events. The retrieval time of up to 12 hours is acceptable for audit scenarios with advance notice. S3 Standard with a lifecycle rule transitioning objects to S3 Standard IA after 45 days matches the raw event data pattern. Standard provides the low latency, frequent access performance needed during the active 45-day window, while Standard IA reduces storage costs for the subsequent 90-day period when access is rare. Standard IA charges a per-retrieval fee but is cost-effective when access is infrequent. S3 Intelligent Tiering automatically moves objects between frequent access and infrequent access tiers based on actual access patterns, charging a small per-object monitoring fee. It is the optimal choice for analytics results with unpredictable access frequencies. Objects viewed frequently remain in the hot tier while dormant objects are automatically moved to save costs without manual lifecycle rule management. S3 Standard for compliance logs would cost significantly more than Glacier Deep Archive for data accessed virtually never. S3 One Zone IA sacrifices availability by storing data in only one availability zone and does not match the heavy initial access pattern of raw event data. S3 Standard IA for analytics results would charge retrieval fees whenever results are accessed frequently, making intelligent tiering more cost-effective for that unpredictable pattern. Let's slow down here. 3 data categories, 3 correct answers, and the logic behind each one. Picture 3 data streams hitting the Northwind data lake, each with completely different behavior. Compliance logs, written monthly, stored for 7 years, almost never read. That's Glacier Deep Archive, roughly $1 per terabyte per month. A 12-hour retrieval time is fine when audits give advance notice. Raw event data is different. You hammer it for 45 days, then access falls off a cliff. Start in standard. At day 45, a lifecycle rule flips it to standard IA, infrequent access, and storage costs drop by nearly half. Analytics results are the wildcard. Some get viewed daily, others sit cold for months. There's no pattern you can predict. Intelligent tiering watches actual access and moves objects automatically, with no retrieval fees. 3 patterns, 3 classes. WAF blocks application layer attacks. Shield absorbs volumetric floods, never swap them. All upfront standard REs win on savings when the type is fixed. Dedicated hosts are the only option with physical socket visibility. OK. Question 16. Litware Incorporated operates a single AWS account shared by 3 business units: finance, engineering, and marketing. Each team deploys its own EC2 instances, RDS databases, and S3 buckets. The finance team needs to produce monthly reports showing exactly how much each business unit is spending on AWS, attributed at the individual resource level. Which AWS feature must be activated and applied to resources to enable this cost tracking capability? Select one. Review the answer choices on screen. The correct answer is option D. Tags are the prerequisite. No tag, no cost split by team. Cost allocation tags allow AWS customers to attach custom key value metadata labels to individual AWS resources, for example, tagging each EC2 instance and RDS database with a business unit key and value such as finance, engineering, or marketing. Once user-defined tags are activated in the Billing and Cost Management console, they appear as filterable dimensions in AWS Cost Explorer and in detailed billing exports, enabling precise attribution of cloud spending by team, project, or cost center at the individual resource level. AWS Budgets enables organizations to set spending thresholds and receive alerts when projected or actual costs exceed defined limits. It helps control spending but does not categorize or attribute costs by resource. AWS cost and usage reports provide the most granular billing data available, including per-resource line items, but they only display tag-based cost breakdowns if cost allocation tags have already been activated and applied to the resources in question. AWS Pricing Calculator is a pre-deployment planning tool used to estimate costs for new architectures before they are built. It does not track, categorize, or report on actual spending from running resources. Here we go. Question 17. Likely distractors ahead. Fabricom Media's creative team is deploying a content production workflow on AWS. They need 2 separate storage solutions: high-performance block storage attached to a single EC2 video editing instance for its operating system and active scratch files, and a shared file system that multiple EC2 instances spread across multiple availability zones can simultaneously mount, read from, and write to for collaborative project assets. Which 2 AWS storage services should they use? Select 2. Review the answer choices on screen. The correct answers are option A and option B. One instance gets EBS. Multiple ASes simultaneously need EFS. Amazon EBS provides high-performance block storage volumes that attach directly to individual EC2 instances and deliver consistent, low-latency I/O performance suitable for operating system volumes, active databases, and high-throughput scratch file workloads on a single instance. EBS is the correct choice for the single video editing instance's local storage needs. Amazon EFS is a fully managed, elastic NFS file system that can be simultaneously mounted by thousands of EC2 instances across multiple availability zones within a region. EFS scales storage capacity automatically, supports concurrent reads and writes from all attached instances, and requires no capacity management, making it the correct shared file system for multi-instance collaborative creative workflows. Amazon S3 is object storage optimized for archiving, backup, static content delivery, and data lake workloads. It does not present as a mountable file system compatible with standard file-level editing applications that require concurrent multi-writer access. Amazon FSx for Windows File Server provides high-performance SMB protocol shared storage optimized for Windows-based workloads and Microsoft application compatibility, not general-purpose Linux NFS-compatible multi-as shared storage. AWS Storage Gateway is a hybrid cloud service that bridges on-premises environments to AWS Cloud Storage, and is not a solution for shared storage between EC2 instances running within AWS. Here we go. Question 18. Compare scope and condition. The security team at Northwind Engineering has two distinct monitoring requirements. First, they need to continuously detect malicious activity such as cryptocurrency mining, data exfiltration attempts, and compromised EC2 instance credentials by analyzing VPC flow logs, CloudTrail events, and DNS query logs. Second, they need to automatically scan EC2 instances and container images stored in Amazon ECR to identify known software vulnerabilities and unintended network exposure. Which two AWS services address these requirements? Select 2. Review the answer choices on screen. The correct answers are option A and option B. Behavior detection plus vulnerability scanning, two separate services. Amazon Guard Duty is a continuous threat detection service that uses machine learning to analyze VPC flow logs, CloudTrail management and data events, and DNS query logs to identify malicious activity including cryptocurrency mining, data exfiltration, compromised credentials, and reconnaissance. It directly satisfies the first requirement for behavioral threat detection. Amazon Inspector is an automated vulnerability management service that continuously scans EC2 instances for software vulnerabilities and unintended network reachability, and scans container images in Amazon ECR for known CVEs, directly satisfying the second requirement. AWS Shield Advanced provides managed DDoS protection against volumetric and protocol attacks at the network and transport layers. It does not perform log-based behavioral threat detection or software vulnerability scanning. Amazon Macie uses machine learning to discover and classify sensitive data stored in Amazon S3, addressing data exposure risk rather than threat detection or vulnerability assessment. AWS WAF is a web application firewall that filters HTTP and HTTPS traffic at the application layer to block exploits such as SQL injection and cross-site scripting. It does not analyze infrastructure logs for threats or scan software for vulnerabilities. Next up, question 19. The verb matters here. A Datum Corp stores large volumes of customer data across hundreds of Amazon S3 buckets. The compliance team needs to automatically discover and report on any S3 buckets containing personally identifiable information such as names, social security numbers, and credit card numbers in preparation for a GDPR audit. Which AWS service should a Datum Corp use? Select 1. Review the answer choices on screen. The correct answer is option D. PII in S3 plus GDPR, that combo points straight to Macie. Amazon Macie uses machine learning and pattern matching to automatically discover, classify, and report on sensitive data stored in Amazon S3. Macie identifies personally identifiable information including names, addresses, social security numbers, and financial data such as credit card numbers, making it directly suited for GDPR compliance workflows and data classification audits across large numbers of S3 buckets. Amazon Guard Duty is a threat detection service that monitors for malicious activity and unauthorized behavior across AWS accounts by analyzing CloudTrail API logs, VPC flow logs, and DNS query logs. It identifies security threats, but does not inspect or classify the contents of individual S3 objects for sensitive data patterns. AWS Security Hub aggregates and normalizes security findings from multiple services including GuardDuty, Macie, and Inspector into a centralized dashboard, but does not itself perform data content classification or discovery. AWS Config tracks configuration changes to AWS resources and evaluates resources against compliance rules, but evaluates resource configurations rather than inspecting the actual content of S3 objects for sensitive data. Next up, question 20. Convert the story into selection criteria. Litware Incorporated needs to transfer 800 terabytes of archival video footage from its on-premises data center to Amazon S3. Their one connection provides 500 megabits per second of sustained throughput. The operations team calculated that this bandwidth would require approximately 36 days for a complete transfer over the network, which exceeds the project deadline. Which AWS service should Litware use to complete the migration within an acceptable timeframe? Select one. Review the answer choices on screen. The correct answer is option B. When network math says 36 days, ship the appliance. AWS Snowball Edge is a physical data transfer appliance that AWS ships to the customer's location. The customer loads data onto the device locally at full internal disk speeds, then ships the device back to AWS, where the data is imported directly into Amazon S3. Multiple Snowball Edge devices can be ordered in parallel to handle hundreds of terabytes, and each appliance provides up to 80 terabytes of usable storage capacity. The physical transfer typically completes in days regardless of available WAN bandwidth. The general recommendation is to use the AWS Snow family when a network-based transfer would take longer than approximately 1 week. AWS Data Sync over Direct Connect is a network-based transfer method, while Direct Connect provides more reliable and consistent throughput than a public internet connection. The fundamental constraint remains the available WAN bandwidth, and 500 megabits per second is still insufficient to meet the deadline for 800 terabytes. Amazon S3 transfer acceleration routes uploads through CloudFront Edge locations to optimize public internet paths to S3, but it cannot increase throughput beyond the available WAN connection speed. AWS Storage Gateway Volume Gateway presents cloud storage as on-premises EC2 block volumes for hybrid workloads, and is not designed for bulk one-time data migration at this scale. 3 takeaways from this session. First, compute savings plans apply across instance families. EC2 instance savings plans are family locked. Second, only dedicated hosts expose physical socket and core topology for per-socket license compliance. Third, WAF inspects HTTP application traffic. Shield absorbs volumetric network floods, different OSI layers. Pricing commitments, security layers, storage tiers, choices that turn knowledge into a passing score. If any of today's distinctions still feel fuzzy, rewatch the deep dives. You're closer than you think. One quick thing before the next set: subscribe if these are making your prep easier. It keeps them free and helps new students find them. Comment your score. I read every one. If you'd like a different exam covered, suggest it below. And if the pacing or the visuals could be better for you, let me know your thoughts.